This is Trigonometry, and we are starting 5.1 today. And 5.1 just deals with angles and degrees. So in geometry, you would have been dealing with side A, and big A stood for angle. The little one stood for the side, and the big letter stood for the angle. In trig, we use Greek letters. So, for example, we use symbols like this to show angles. That is equal to theta. This is alpha. So if I use any of these Greek letters, I'll refer to theta, alpha, beta, and of course, pi. Those are the four popular Greek letters that I might use. Okay, first of all, how do you do angles? Over here is 0 degrees. Up here is 90 degrees and counterclockwise. This is going in counterclockwise. This is a positive 180. This is a positive 270, and all the way back around is 360. We can also go in clockwise, the way a clock goes. That's 0. This is a negative 90. This is a negative 180, a negative 270, and all the way back around is a negative 360. So if I asked you, just really quickly, I'll just graph one. If I told you to graph 210 degrees, which is a positive 210, I have to go in this direction, starting here. And basically, I like going here and going 0, that's 90, that's 180. A little past the 180 is 210 degrees. We don't hand out protractors. So that's a positive 210 degrees. If I told you to graph a negative 150, let's go, not a negative 150, let's go a negative 50 degrees. If I told you to graph a negative 150, you still have to start here, but you go down, and it's about here is a negative 150 degrees. Okay, for the first part of the assignment, part 1, you have to change each from degrees decimal to DMS. So DD stands for degrees in decimal form. This is a degrees in decimal form, and we're going to move it to DMS. DMS stands for degrees, minutes, and seconds. So, take your calculator out, and if you don't have your calculator, turn it off until you can find your calculator. Go to your calculator and type in 34.95, just like it's written, 34.95. Most everybody on their calculator has a degrees, a minute, and a second button on your calculator. A graphing calculator is a little bit different. You have to hit this is on a regular calculator, but on a graphing calculator, you have to hit the second angle. There's a little angle button that you have to hit, which is right here. So you'd have to go second angle. But most of you, all you do is hit this, and the degrees, minutes, and seconds will show up. Then you have to arrow over until you find the DMS. So you're in this button, and then just arrow over it to find the DMS, and then just hit the DMS, and it'll put it in degrees, minutes, and seconds. So 34.95 degrees is the same thing as 34 degrees and 57 minutes. Okay, one more of these. On your calculator, type in a negative 72.775. Hit your DMS button on your calculator, and it's going to end up being a negative 72 degrees, 46 minutes, and 30 seconds. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction. Again, you have to hit the degrees, minutes, and seconds. So in order to plug this into your calculator, you have to plug a negative 128 in. And then what you have to do is hit your degrees so that it shows up. And then you have to hit 30 and hit your minute so that this shows up. And then 45 degrees and hit that so that that shows up. It's taking me a little bit because I'm trying to explain it to you and do it at the same time. And 45 seconds. And this is going to end up being a negative 128.5125 degrees. So I went from DMS to DD. So let's do one more. Plug in 29 degrees. Put in 6 minutes. And put in 66 seconds. It's going to end up being 29.11 or 0.118 degrees. Where do you find this in the real world? You find this on a globe. Latitude and longitude is in degrees, minutes, seconds. If you would have just said on the globe, there's a boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and it's 29 degrees latitude and 15 degrees longitude, you might never find that boat out on the ocean. If you did 29 degrees, 15 minutes and 38 seconds for the latitude, and 15 degrees, 14 minutes, and 22 seconds for longitude, you might be able to find the boat out on the water. So the more precise it is, the easier to find the boat for longitude or latitude, or in trigonometry for designing angles or architects and their angles. So, okay, next page. Do 2 rotations clockwise. So I'm just going to draw you a picture. If you're going clockwise, this is the way a clock runs, which makes it a negative. And if you go 2 rotations around, 1 rotation is a negative 360. 2 rotations around is a negative 720 degrees. It's the same thing as 2 rotations clockwise. If you go, or if you don't want to make a picture, you know clockwise is a negative 360. Multiply it by 2, a negative 360 times 2 is a negative 720 degrees. And that's what I'm going to do with this one. 4.5 rotations counterclockwise. Counterclockwise goes in this direction, which is a positive angle. So just take 360 and multiply it by 4.5 rotations, which is going to give you 1,620 degrees. So just multiply by a positive 360 or a negative 360, depending on if it was clockwise or counterclockwise. The next part, identify coterminal angles. So what are coterminal angles? I want to go back to the first page. And this angle right here, 90 degrees, and this angle right here is negative 270 degrees. These are called coterminal angles because they land in the same spot on an XY coordinate plane. So, how do you land in the same spot? On the test, they want you to identify a coterminal angle that's positive and negative. So, for 22 degrees, I add a positive 360 to that. So 382 is a positive angle that's coterminal. And then I take 360 and I add 22 to it, which gives us the negative coterminal angle, which is a negative 338. If I graph this one and if I graph this one, it should end up in the exact same spot as 22 degrees. So let's do another one. I want a positive one, and then I want a negative one. A positive one is, I'm going to subtract 360, and that's only going to give us 290. That's a positive angle. So 650 and subtract 360, this is a positive angle. I could have added 360 too. And then 650 minus 720 is going to give me a negative angle, which is a negative 70. These two, this one right here and this one right here, is one positive and one negative coterminal angle to 650. All you're doing is adding 360 or subtracting 360. Find a coterminal angle and what quadrant are you in. So what you're going to do is take 453 and subtract from it. And you're going to get 93 degrees. And if you graph a 93 degrees, it's right here, which puts you in the second quadrant because it goes first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, next page, last page of notes. Find the reference angles. This leads on to the next chapter. A reference angle is always positive. Remember that a reference angle is always positive and it's always less than 90 degrees. So all you're going to do is 10, 11, and 12. You're going to draw yourself a little picture. 227. You're going to graph where you think 227 is. 227 is past the 180 marker, about right here. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take this arrow and you're always going to bring it up to the x-axis so it makes a triangle. This angle in here, is called the reference angle. That angle in there is called the reference angle. So basically, you went to here's 90. You went to here's 90, and then you went to here's 180. How much past the 180 did we go? We went 47 degrees past the 180 marker. That's called the reference angle. It's always positive, and it's always less than 90 degrees. 47 degrees is positive, and always less than 90 degrees. Negative 210, I go down here, that's a negative 90, negative 180, and I go past the 180 marker. And always bring it down to the x-axis, never bring it to the y-axis. I went past the 180 marker by 30 degrees. That's called the reference angle. 300 is in this direction, 180, 270, and it's about right here, it's 300. It's easy to bring it to the y-axis, but you're not. You're going to bring it to the x-axis. This angle right there is called the reference angle, and the reference angle is 60 degrees. It's always less than 90, and it's always positive. That's all the notes for today. Your homework assignment is on 5.1, and all I want you to do is 19 through 57, do the odds, except don't do number 43. So there is your homework for 5.1.